Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we're back working on Project Black Pearl. We're gonna do a bit of maintenance on her, getting her ready for the big work that we have here in the future. Today we're going to tackle changing the transmission fluid. This is a manual tranny car, the rear diff oil, fuel filter, and the trunk handle, which has gone to complete crap, plus a couple of other minor repairs that I filmed prior to today that we'll throw in at the end. Let's get into it. We're gonna go ahead and start up front with the fuel filter. It's behind this protective cover here, which you can see has taken quite a beating down the road. It's got a couple of screws in it. We've got a 10mm washer nut here, another one. Normally there would be an 8mm right here, another 8 there, and then you can see it's all flappy. It should pop down once we get this guy off on this side. Sometimes you gotta pry on that one. Push up and pry back a little bit. Try not to rip that tab clean off of there. And then our fuel filter is hiding right under here. I'm gonna go ahead and pull a few more off up front here for clarity, just so you can see better. You're gonna want a drip pan down underneath here too, because when you take these lines off, the fuel filter is full. You can see on our new fuel filter, it has a built-in regulator. That's gonna be this little vacuum line at the front. While you're under here, take a peek and just look to make sure that it doesn't look like it's dry rotted or cracked or anything. So this fuel filter has these yellow plastic rubber caps. They're more silicone than anything. Way back in the day, I changed the fuel filter on a 540, much like this one. Started it up and it seemed to be okay. Cool. The car left. Came back later with drivability problems. We probably spent a solid week, being me, the shop foreman, my team lead, trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with this car. As it turns out, we decided to go backwards and just try to work at some of the simple things, right? What have we touched on the car? The fuel filter being one of them. Eventually, we came to the fuel filter and we're like, screw it, pull that sucker off, let's replace it. We replaced the fuel filter, drivability problem went completely away. Well, they used to use these hard plastic caps back in the day, and it would appear that before the filter got to me, it got dropped, and that cap got cut clean off and inside on the inlet side of the filter. So what was happening is occasionally that flap would sit up, block the flow of fuel, and you'd get lean running conditions and misfires and all sorts of drivability problems. The car would shut down, it would start back up, that thing might push over, and it was fine. We found it by happenstance, looking at the filter, trying to drain it out, see if it was plugged up with gum or goo or something. And I looked in there with the flashlight and I could see that little wafer flat on its side and went, holy macaroni, that was our problem the whole time. All that being said, when you take these off, just peek down in there, make sure there's nothing occluding or blocking the inlet, outlet, or anything like that. I only know this from personal experience. That's a tough one to diagnose. So I went ahead and sprayed a little WD-40 on these hose clamps just to make sure that as they're breaking apart, that everything is moving nicely. And in the process, I noticed something kind of funny, kind of sad at the same time. This clamp back here, this is an original hose clamp from the factory. This fuel filter is 01-10-01. This is the original fuel filter on this car. You've got to be kidding me. Yeah, it should have been changed a long time ago. Let's get the sucker off of here. Now would be a good time also to probably replace these lines. This car is a 2002, it's 2024. That's many, many years on these rubber hoses. Rather than putting it together and having it fail on me, I think I'll just replace them now. The filter clamp bolt is just a 10mm. And that is part of the clamp. It stays up there. To get our clamp off the back here, I'm just gonna cut it. Peel that right off. Then a pair of needle nose, just pry against the housing. Safety glasses, probably a good time now not to use your super squints. Remember, this straight line goes on the outside, the inlet. The curved line goes on the center point. Okay, I've got my 3 lines cut. And I've got my new vacuum line up top. You can slide our clamp bracket off, put it back on in the same orientation. Make sure you're paying attention to your flow arrow. It's really hard to get this wrong. There's one line on one side, two lines on the other. I wrote my date and mileage on here for future reference, something I like to do with all of my maintenance. We're gonna slide the two lines in together at one time, and we'll slip our vacuum line on. You're gonna have to push your lines back in order to get your front line on and kind of bend it all together, because it's a nice tight fit here, just like that. That helps hold everybody together. Hate it when you do something like this and totally forget to put the clamp on. Get our mount installed. The rest is really pretty simple. We just have to reverse our removal. We're gonna tighten up our clamps. These clamps don't have to be Armstrong tight. We need to compress the hose and then just a little bit more. Otherwise, we'll wind up cutting the hose. Plastic cover goes back together, and we can check this off our list. Up next, we can get our transmission oil changed. This is going to be kind of a temporary measure for now. This transmission is leaking from the case seal here and the case seal here, which is kind of a bummer because you got to take it out, split the two halves, pull the bell housing and pull the gear drive or the gear mechanisms off, and then use an anaerobic sealant around there. So for now, I'm just going to change the fluid because it has a ridiculously difficult cold shift. Once everything gets warmed up and moving, it shifts pretty nice. And I'm going to use the same fluid that I'm running in the M5. These are essentially the same transmissions with a few minor modifications on the outside for the M5. This is the 420G get rag transmission, and you've got your fill plug up here and your drain plug down here. These are both 17s. And whoever was here last cranked this sucker and the drain plug all the way up into the case, which it's not necessary to crank it that far. It's a tapered thread, so it should have sealed before it got that far in there. A full transmission would just have a little bit of fluid dripping out of the fill plug. This one doesn't have any. You stick your finger in there, and there is fluid right there. So it's not low by any means, but it's not full. This is why you take the fill plug out, because if you can't get the drain plug out, you're screwed, and vice versa. If you can't get the fill plug in, you can't refill it. I'm gonna use a bigger wrench. Really don't want to crank this into my face. There we go. Bigger breaker bar. I'm gonna catch some of this fluid just so I can see what it looks like. I'm gonna use a clean inspection cup. Woo! Yep, there's oil all over me now. Guess I should take the vent plug out of this guy. Now that we've made a gigantic mess. We got some fluid though. It looks like this might have the purple fluid in it already, which would be kind of a bummer. That would tell me there's something more going on inside the transmission. Or this fluid is just really old. It is pretty dark. Doesn't smell bad. I often get asked, how do you know what it's supposed to smell like? Time, experience. That's about it. Once you smell cooked or damaged fluid of any kind, it'll stick with you. So I am throwing just a tiny bit of thread sealant around my drain plug because this thing was way overclocked in there. And if you look up in there, you can see the threads open up. It's not actually tightening anything up in there. You go too far. Normally these things would hang out about halfway. So you can see I turned that all the way in almost just by hand. These were definitely over cranked. Hopefully my case isn't damaged. I'll turn it to there. Now for fill duty, I'm just going to use a little hand pump here. There it is right there. Once we start dripping like that, we know we're full. We got to just light stream. We'll go ahead and throw the plug back in. We're going to go till it's tight, and then we're just going to stop right there. Out back, our diff service is pretty easy too. We've got our fill and drain plug. These are both 14mm Allens. And I'm using the BMW, or I guess it's not BMW, this is a Hazet, whoops, Hazet tool that I picked up way back in the day. That works really nicely for this access here. It's got an adjustable Allen on this side. You can go get in these really easily. And then it's got a 17 on that side, which I could have used on the transmission, but like you saw, we needed a lot more torque to get those off. So I just pop open our fill plug first, give it a quick whack. Our drain plug, same thing. And we can spin out our fill plug and see if we were overfilled or underfilled. Well, it looks like this one was just slightly overfilled. These compression rings should be replaced each time. This looks like it's got royal purple back here as well. This time when I pull the drain plug, I'm gonna lift up my bucket so that it's not splashing all over the place. Got enough tranny oil on me. Yeah, much better. Well, I thought that I had some of these crush rings. Guess I didn't. I do have some new drain plugs with integrated seals, so I'm gonna give that a roll and see how that goes. The torque on these is tight, and then whoop, yep, that's torqued. These gaskets are destroyed from somebody going and cranking down on it as tight as they can, which is not what needs to happen. So yet again, I'm gonna be running the same diff oil that I run in the M5 over there. I run Mobil 1 75W90, and it seems to work out just dandy. And I'm using the same pumper that I just pumped the tranny with. This is gonna be the same fill procedure as your transmission. We're gonna pump until fluid starts coming out. I like to give the tires one quick rotation and get some gear oil on the ring, and then I throw the plug in there. It doesn't need to be dumping out. Just like that. Tight and torqued. Now we need to get this gummy, gooey, broken trunk latch out of here. And to do that, we're gonna start by pulling this lower trim panel off. There's gonna be a screw behind a little plastic cover in here. You gotta peek up in there and pop that cover out. There's our cover. These two little plastic push pins, they pop out pretty easy. They're supposed to pop out pretty easy. Okay, and then there should be a couple of plastic clips. Yep, 4 of them. What we need to do is unplug it. I'm gonna see if we can do this without pulling this piece off. We'll just drop, we don't even have to drop that out. Let's unplug our light. That's currently being held in by staples. Swell. It works. Sometimes you got to take a look at your new part to figure out what's going on here. So this just clips into place. The top here, right there is where it locks in. So let's see, it's in the car like that, which means it needs to rock out this way where this little tab is, and then we need to unplug the back side of it, which is why we pulled this cover off. That looks like this wire here. This feels kind of glued into place a little bit. There we go. Like that, yep. Then here's our harness. Go, that slides right out. Our new one, it's about the same length. Much better looking. You look in where the latch is. There goes the light. Should be able to see your finger. There's my finger back there. That's where your cable needs to stretch back and through. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull these staples out that were digging into my finger. This is not how you fix these problems. I found staples all over the place in this car. Yes, these little plastic tabs break. Go to the junkyard, get one out of the junkyard. With our harness slid in, we're gonna slide in the back first, or the bottom down here, and then we're gonna pinch it into place. Now we can go to the back side and reattach our harness here. Now, whenever you're working with a lock, before you close it, manually latch that sucker and test it. Sometimes more than once. Otherwise, you could close it. Maybe you didn't make that connection all the way, and perhaps you don't have a lock actuator that works or a lock cylinder or whatever, and you're going to be in a world of hurt at that point. All right, let's put our plastic cover back on. Plastic tab and our little plastic cover. Then I'm gonna go check my salvage pile and see if I have one of these. Well, that was a successful run to the junk pile. Found one, see if it's got a good bulb in it. Good bulb. Watch this, watch this. Oh, that's satisfying, just snaps right into place. Well, that was a pretty successful, quick bit of maintenance. I covered a couple other things on the car while I had it in the shop. Really common for the pork chops to get destroyed on these, so I replaced them with an inexpensive set that I got from carparts.com. The pork chops are actually really hard to find, or the front fender splash panels for a non-M Sport or M5. Everybody makes a remake of those, but the just regular ones seem to be harder to find. Maybe I'm wrong and I just didn't look in the right spots, but I picked these up pretty cheap. They were like 15 bucks a piece. Underneath, I also went ahead and replaced my washer fill hose. The old one was falling apart, and while I was at the junkyard, I found one on another 540 that was there that was actually brand new-ish. It still had the sticker on it. So I pulled that corner apart over there. I disconnected it from the washer tank and then filled it up, went to test it, didn't work. Thankfully, I had a set of pumps out of my M5, since it doesn't have a washer tank, that were still good. I swapped those in, and now we actually have windshield washer jets. When I was working on the seats recently, I pulled the floor mats out so I could vacuum, and there's a distinct possibility that these were original floor mats, and these are the most worn mats I have ever seen. The bottom side has turned to complete sand and dust. It took forever to clean all of this debris out of the carpet in the car, but thankfully everything was in good shape. All I had to do was get a new set, and I got a new set of anthracite mats from FCP Euro, so now I have the lifetime replacement on those, assuming they'll still be mats in the future. You know, I'm looking over here at the transmission fluid, and when I move it back and forth, it still has a purple hue to it, not really in bad shape. I don't know that my fluid change is going to fix anything. Maybe in the future when I split the case on this guy and I figure out what's going on inside, if anything, I'll be able to address that. At the very least, I'll address the leak from both of the case seals. So let's go ahead and take a look at what all of this costs, and we're gonna mark off on our list so that we can keep making that mental progress. We're gonna start off by marking our pork chops, getting the front end put together, our floor mats, our fuel filter. Our fuel tank is partially fixed because it's plugged, remember. Eventually I'll put a whole tank in there. Our fluids, we've got our trans fluid and our diff fluid done for now. We are going to be pulling the diff out of this with the subframe at some point and replacing all the bushings back there, perhaps some of the control arms. So if at that point I need to do anything with those seals, I will. My splash panels and trunk handle, I bought both of those from carparts.com, and they were $92.10 for all three of them. The washer hose, I stripped it out of a wrecked car at a junkyard, got that for $3. The trans fluid, $46.50, diff oil, $32, fuel filter, $63.99. I'm not counting the little bit of fuel filter or fuel line since I had that on hand. My floor mats were $105.99 for a total of $343.58. That brings our grand total up to $4,644.77. As you can see, the repairs are starting to get past just labor and parts that I have laying around here. Albeit I am going to be pulling a few more parts off the M5. I noticed that my headlight seals on the M5 are in fantastic shape, so I'm going to pull those over to here. When I do the headlight adjusters on these, they are both broken. And I think I might pull my door sill plates out because they're also in really good shape and these are not. If anybody knows where I can get a set of just regular E39 door sill plates, not the M plates that everybody wants $400 for, I would love to put a nice set in here and get that cleaned up. The one at the junkyard that I found recently, it didn't have them because it was an M Sport and those are highly sought after. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. This project's coming along and it's getting more excited every time I pull it in the shop. Or I'm getting more excited about it every time I pull it in the shop. Whew. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.